Okay, it looks like the recording has started. Welcome everyone. I now call to order this work session of the Anchorage Assembly on AO 2021-110, amending Title 28 elections. It is Friday, December 3rd, 2021. It is 2:06 p.m. We are noticed from 1:40 until 3 p.m. today. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Suzanne LaFrance.
Here.
Christopher Constant. Jamie Allard. Forrest Dunbar.
Here.
Crystal Kennedy.
Here.
Cameron Perez Verdilla.
Here.
Pete Peterson. Austin Quinn Davidson. Felix Rivera. John Weddleton.
Here.
And Meg Zalatel.
Here.
And Miss Allard has indicated that she is here in the queue.
I'm here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Jones. And I want to note as well that Mr. Rivera, Ms. Quinn-Davidson, and Mr. Constant are attending a conference and will participate as their schedules permit. We have Erica McConnell here, Deputy Clerk of Elections, along with Barbara Jones, Municipal Clerk, who will be walking us through the changes proposed to in AO 2021-110. So Ms. McConnell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to share my screen to show the ordinance. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What we have shared with you today is an S version. This S version has not been introduced in front of the Assembly, but it contains recommended changes from Mr. Gates and Mr. Weddleton after their review of the original version. The plan is that the S version be either laid on the table at the upcoming Tuesday meeting or added to the addendum for the meeting of December 21st. In order for us to include any changes that may be needed after today's work session. With that, I will start walking through. So here in section 1, we have added a definition of the word tabulate, and this change is to provide more clarity regarding the difference between the terms count and tabulate, clarifying that tabulating is the process of adding up votes in order to determine the results of a contest.
And if I could just ask folks to please mute. We're picking up some background noise. And
you ready?
Could I get
so can you
everyone mute, please?
It's tug 123. It's a capital T.
Okay. Hold on.
And let me just note for the record, we've been joined by Mr. Peterson at 2:08.
Madam Chair, I'm going to continue.
Mike.
Thank you. In section 2, the change here clarifies that there is no space provided for a write-in on a runoff ballot, which is consistent with 2 other sections of Title 28. Skipping ahead to section 3, here on line 34, this adds that voters who are in list maintenance status in the state registration database are also not to be automatically mailed a ballot. Voters who are in list maintenance status have had no contact with the State Division of Elections in 4 years. That includes not having voted in 4 years, and have also been sent the first notice as part of the state's list maintenance process. With that said, these voters are still allowed to vote. They may vote in person at a vote center, or if they call us to request a replacement ballot, they will be sent one. The number of voters in LM status will vary year by year, but currently there are over 8,000 voters in this status. So not mailing to them in the April election will save us almost $11,000. In section 4, the changes in this section make the requirements for being a voter assistant generally consistent with the requirements for being a special needs representative. Section 5 is just a brief change between count and tabulate. Section 6 is a significant section relating to observers, and it includes an update to the Observer's Handbook, which is adopted by reference and is one of the documents that I did send to you earlier. And I should also note that the document that I'm presenting today, along with an explanatory crosswalk and the Observer's Handbook, are posted on the work session page of the Assembly's website for members of the public who may wish to access those documents. So again, this section includes updates to the Observer's Handbook adopted by reference. The handbook was last updated in 2019. I'm going to highlight 3 significant changes in this section. The first starts on line 50 right here. And this relates to the number of observers allowed in election locations. And this was discussed in depth at the Ethics and Elections Committee multiple times. This proposal clarifies that the number of observers may be limited by the municipal clerk, but changes at the clerk's sole discretion to a requirement for good cause. The second significant change starts right here on line 9. And this sets a time frame for registration of observers. This time frame starts right after the slate of candidates for the election has been set, which happens at the beginning of February and ends just before ballots are mailed out, which provides 40 days for observer registration forms to be submitted for a regular election. The reason for this time period is to allow the clerk's office to provide observer training, and this will assist the observers to better understand the election process and make them more effective in their role. The time period ends just about when return ballots begin to arrive, because at that point there is no longer the capacity for the staff, the clerk's office staff, to provide meaningful training. The third change relates to a, sorry, I'm just moving down.
And before you go on, Ms. McConnell, I just want to follow up on your point that all these documents are available at uni.org. If you click on Assembly and at the top, click on Work Sessions and scroll down to this work session, members of the public and others can find those documents there. Thank you, Ms. McConnell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The third change that I am highlighting is that there is a proposed prohibition on electronic devices within designated areas of election locations, and this prevents the recording of confidential information, which is strictly prohibited. Section 7. This again relates to the clarification between counting and tabulating, and it clarifies that there is no tabulating, which is the adding up of votes to achieve results. There's no tabulating before 8 p.m. on election night. Section 8 is just a conforming amendment to a change that was made last January regarding the deadline to receive military and overseas or ballots from military and overseas voters. Sections 9 and 10, they look pretty complicated, but in actuality, they are just reorganizations of some of the provisions moving things from one place to a different place to where it better fits in the structure of the ordinance, and deleting redundant language that is actually already in a different place in code. Section 12 relates to the adjudication of votes and makes some clarifications regarding the counting of write-in votes. And there's two parts that I want to specifically highlight for you. One is here at B4, and this language in the second half of the section, the original language was found to be very confusing during the spring election. So we knew that it needed to be clarified, and the clarification proposes that if a voter writes in the write-in space the name of a candidate that is also printed on the ballot for that same race, and then the voter marks both of the ovals, that would actually be counted as a vote for that candidate rather than not counted and considered an overvote. And then down here in the new section 12, this relates to when write-in votes are counted. And down here in section C, it clarifies that if the aggregate number of write-in votes is the most votes of any candidate in that contest, or the aggregate of the write-in votes is the second place winner and within the margin that requires an automatic recount, then we will allocate those write-in votes to the specific named candidates that were written in, but that process happens during a recount, and that would trigger an automatic recount. Section 13 is a conforming amendment with Section 12 that adds the automatic recount in the case of the write-in votes being a winner or a close second place. And then Section 14 is an amendment to the recount section that just moves the language here in the new D from Section C2 because this language is universally applicable to all recounts. So that was a very high-level overview of this ordinance, and I'm sure there's a lot to talk about, and there may be questions, so I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Ms. McConnell. So pausing here for any questions from Assembly members. Please put yourself in the chat if you want to get in the queue. I don't see anyone right now, Ms. McConnell, so if you want to go ahead and continue.
Well, Madam Chair, we've been through the ordinance. I can show you all the crosswalk, and this crosswalk document essentially tells you exactly what I just went through. It sets forth each change and why that change was made. The Observer's Handbook is also here. And this is a little bit too long to walk through, but if there are any questions regarding this handbook, we'd be happy to answer them. So I really have nothing further.
Thank you, Ms. McConnell. And while we're pausing for members maybe to put themselves in the queue, would you go ahead and summarize the process thus far that has resulted in these? I know you mentioned the S version in consultation or work from Mr. Weddleton, but prior to that with the commission, and then also the schedule for public hearings.
Of course, Madam Chair, thank you. We talked with the the Assembly Ethics and Elections Committee regarding the proposals in this ordinance at 3 different meetings, which were held. I believe the first one was held at the end of September. and the second and third were held in early October. So we spent, I think, a total of 4 to 5 hours discussing the draft ordinance with the Ethics and Elections Committee before it was introduced in front of the Assembly at the end of October. Mr. Gates has reviewed it, and again, many of the changes in the S version are related to his excellent recommendations and some of Mr. Weddleton's excellent recommendations. There are 2 public hearings scheduled for this ordinance. The first one is this upcoming Tuesday, December 7th, and the second one is at the following Assembly meeting, which is on December 21st.
Thank you, Ms. McConnell. I will ask if Ms. Jones or Mr. Gates wanted to make any comments, as I don't see any members in the queue.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Gates?
Well, thank you. Since you invited us, and I'm sure Ms. Jones might say the same thing. I just want to mention that it's critical that this get passed at the latest, the December 21st meeting. We really need to update election code before our election cycle starts, and that's the last meeting for that to happen, you know, as Ms. McConnell emphasized.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Ms. Jones, is there anything you would like to add?
I think she won, but she's stuck on me.
I believe Ms. Jones may be stuck on mute. Is there anyone on here who can assist? Let's see. Barbara, if you're trying to unmute, I don't see where I have the ability to unmute you. Are there any other comments or any questions? Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was just going to say this typically is something that the Elections Committee does every year after the election in April, and after we get all the numbers put together. We start in the summertime looking at Title 28 and to see if there are some amendments or changes that need to be done or updates that to clarify the code. And so that's what we've done here. And, you know, we've had several committee meetings where we've gone over this. And I believe it's ready for presentation at our meeting on Tuesday. And I'd appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Weddleton?
Erica, since it sounds like we're about done with this, and oddly for today, we still have time at the meeting. And we've been kicking around a possible amendment, and I wonder, is that something you're prepared to go through now, just to show people?
Sure, let me pull it up.
I guess we should check with Suzanne. Is that okay?
Of course, yes. We have this odd luxury of time in this meeting that we lacked in our prior 2 work sessions.
Okay. This
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Allard, I see you're in the queue after Mr. Weddleton.
Yeah, apologize. I'll wait.
Okay, thanks.
So, Madam Chair, there has been a lot of discussion about the voter registration, which is controlled at the state level, and the fact that we do send mailed ballots to voters who have out-of-state mailing addresses. This can happen for people can have an out-of-state mailing address for a variety of reasons. They can be going to school, they can be caregiving to a relative, they can work remotely. But it has been something that has had a lot of discussion. And so we worked with Mr. Weddleton on an amendment, and this amendment would require the clerk's office, the elections team, to mail an application to all voters who have an out-of-state mailing address and who are not military or overseas voters. And this application would be mailed to them a minimum of 60 days before a regular or special election. And the voter with the out-of-state mailing address would be required to apply to receive a ballot. And if they did not return the application to apply to receive a ballot, then they would not be automatically mailed a ballot. They would able to return this application up to 7 days before the election. And if it was an election that included a mayoral race and thus had the potential for a runoff, the application would have to include request for a ballot for a potential runoff election, because there wouldn't be time to send applications, separate applications, to get a runoff ballot should there be a runoff election. With that, I can turn it back over to Mr. Weddleton if he has anything to add.
Well, thanks. Just, this addresses something we've all heard. People are worried about ballots being sent to lower 48 and people who may be registered in 2 states still voting and things like that. So kind of putting this out there, it's got its pros and cons. It raises the barrier for voting a bit, which has generally not been the goal of vote by mail. But I don't think it's irrational to think that there could be a problem with this. So I believe, and Erica could, I think, give some stats on that. Practically, it has not been shown to be a problem. So it's out there for discussion and thought. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. Before I move on to Ms. Allard, are there any members who have any questions on the amendment?
Madam Chair, this is Mr. Weddleton's amendment, right?
Yes, and if you want to speak to that, Ms. Allard, go ahead. No one else is in the queue either.
Yeah,
so
thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Weddleton. This is good, and I appreciate you bringing this forward. And I have some other little ideas on the side, but this is a good amendment, and I think this addresses some of my concerns that I was in queue for. But you put this out there, so thank you. And Madam Chair, you could take me out of queue then.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Allard. Do members have any other questions or comments on the amendment or any aspects of the proposed changes? Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I apologize, Mr. Weldon. I got distracted by something there for a minute. So you might have already addressed this, but with regard to the military voters, so it looks like they will continue to be automatically mailed a ballot. I'm wondering why the distinction for military voters versus, other categories of voters, those who might be working in the Foreign Service, for example, or those who are, in the Peace Corps, or, there's a variety of reasons why you might be out of the state. And so can you speak to why they've sort of been pulled out here?
I guess that's with momentum, because we've shown some special deference to those groups in, the existing Title 28. This Erica could. Is it possible for us to know all the different reasons people are out of state? That's also an issue or question.
Madam Chair, if I could also respond, this is Erica.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So anyone with a military or overseas address is exempted from this amendment and would continue to be automatically mailed a ballot. And you may recall that we have even instituted a system where we are mailing out ballots to those voters with military or overseas mailing addresses earlier than we're mailing ballots to the majority of the voting population. It's ending up being 30 to 40 days before the election because the mailing can take so much time. So this application process would be limited to people who have mailing addresses in the 49 other states that aren't an APO or a, AE. I'm not really sure what happens when you're on a military base in another state, but if it's clear that it's an APO or an AE mailing address or another country, this would not apply to you. We do not have information about why somebody has an Alaska residence address and an out-of-state mailing address. As I mentioned, there are a number of reasons, but we wouldn't know what they are for any particular voter.
Okay, I really appreciate that. I misunderstood what the amendment was doing then. So you're saying if someone is in the military, but they're in, let's say Fort Bragg, for example, then they have to go through this process too. It's the overseas folks that are exempted. But if you are in a base in the lower 48, you'd have to apply affirmatively the same way that like a college student would. Is that right?
Through the chair, Mr. Dunbar, all we know is the mailing address, and I apologize, I don't know enough about what your mailing address might be if you live at Fort Bragg. But if you live off base and you have just a regular mailing address, then yes, you would have to send in an application. If somehow your address is identifiable as being a military address, then no, you would be automatically mailed a ballot. And I can do a little bit more research to figure out where some of those addresses might be.
Okay. All right. And I understand that with the overseas, it's everybody. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar and Ms. McConnell. So Mr. Gates has a comment, and then we'll go to Ms. Allard, who just said disregard. So we'll go to Mr. Gates with his comment.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Well, I was going to say I'll wait until the end after all the questions, but if nobody's left in the queue, then I just wanted to say that Ms. McConnell's done a fantastic and excellent job on this, and she was the key driver, and I just wanted to commend her for the excellent work. I think she's been with us a year or a little more and gone through that first election last year. And pardon me if I get my facts wrong there, but having her work on this ordinance has been a great benefit to us, and I'm glad she's on our team to do this with her skills and doing regulatory drafting type things. So thanks, Ms. McConnell.
Thank you, Mr. Gates.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. I would like to echo that appreciation as well, Ms. McConnell. Thanks to you for all your work, and to Ms. Jones and Mr. Gates and Mr. Weddleton and members of the Elections Commission as well for getting us through the process, and which I know is robust in terms of the opportunities for feedback. And as you mentioned, Ms. McConnell, there are 2 public hearings scheduled, one this coming Tuesday, December 7th, and then the second one at the meeting of December 21st. So thank you, Ms. McConnell. I am also glad you're here and serving as the elections person. Sorry, I know you're the deputy clerk and elections is your title.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I apologize, but you've reminded me that the Election Commission also did review this ordinance and make a couple good suggestions for amendments that we incorporated and suggested its approval. So thank you for your kind words.
Thank you, Ms. McConnell. Do members have any other questions or comments?
I do, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Ms. Allard.
Thank you. So I do have quite a few concerns in reference to transparency, people being able to come in and video. I have concerns about those. I have concerns about the timing of, okay, if the training is going to be provided for individuals who are running for office or who would like observers, is it only one training? Is it two trainings? Is it, if they miss a training, is it going to be able to be brought in? I have a lot of concerns. So what I would like to know is, I know the 21st, we're supposed to be discussing all this in the assembly, but I'm wondering if we could actually have another work session. And if that is not possible, yeah, there's just a little bit more work, I believe, that has to be done on this. And any suggestions would be very well appreciated. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. And if I might suggest too that members who do have specific questions, if you could put those together and then send them to Ms. McConnell, Mr. Gates, and Ms. Jones, and correct me, Ms. McConnell, if there's a better way to route those, I think that would be a helpful step. And then definitely, Ms. Allard, if there's a need for a work session and further discussion, we can certainly schedule that, though the time frame is a little bit compressed. We will, do what we need to do. But if you could just get your questions together, I think that would be a good first step. And Ms. McConnell, did you want to add?
Madam Chair, everything you said sounds great.
I agree. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Allard. Thank you, Ms. McConnell. Okay, do members have any other questions or comments? Just gonna have a little bit of an extended pause here because folks have been reporting that it's taking some time to unmute on Teams lately. Going once, going twice. Okay, I don't see anyone else in the queue. Speak up now if you're unable to unmute and are trying to get in the queue. Seeing no one else, thanks everyone for being here today. And again, Ms. McConnell, for all your work. We will hear public testimony at our next meeting on Tuesday, December 7th. This work session is adjourned. And see some of you at the next one at 3:10 p.m. on the proposed reorganization. Thank you.
Yay, you did great. Oh, it is so strange. I was having trouble with SAP this morning, and when I put it on one side of my screen, the top bar just disappeared. So I couldn't unmute or go in the chat or anything. So I closed it, and I'm still trying to kick some people out of the meeting, but I don't know how to do that. I used to be able to do that. Oh, there it is right there. Here's where I can kick them out.